You can remain seated. Would you please pray with me? Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Last week I was talking with one of the dear people in our family. And this person, just another one of the brilliant, beautiful people from our family who I dearly love. And we are doing planning for a wedding that's going to be happening in our family this Saturday. When out of the blue, she mentioned about being drawn to being a Quaker. I was kind of drawn aback by that statement. I've known this person for a pretty big part of my life. And she's a person that occasionally would go to church, but not one who would ever really, I remember talking about faith or about religion or anything along those lines. And so I said, so, tell me a little more about being a Quaker. She said, well, Mike, I just see God everywhere at work in the world. I don't need to go to a church on Sunday morning or at special times, weddings, funerals, etc. I just see God all the time in all sorts of ways. Now, I will admit, in my hindsight, I wish that I would have said something way different than the way I really responded. For many reasons, my impulse was to become the defender of the faith and the church, as if the church needs a defender, right? Rather than asking more questions about what a Quaker means or why she thinks along those ways, I responded with something along the lines of, well, you know, us church people, we see God at work in the world too. And then I went on to paraphrase some article I read a couple years ago that was on the similar topic, citing that there are lots of people, especially younger people, who say the same things that she was saying, seeing the beauty of God apart from traditional churches and church communities. And then I talked about how the writer went on to say that those people, those spiritual but not religious people, who see God in new ways, well, we church people see the world in the same ways. The difference is we see God in the function and dysfunction of our church communities also. So to this dear and beloved family member, I regurgitated those defensive words. No surprise, that was the end of the faith aspect of our conversation. I put up walls of defensiveness, and I regretted that missed opportunity later. So I've been thinking about that conversation. And I think I have more reflections now than just a missed conversation. It got me thinking. Perhaps learning something new and beautiful about the way God works. And so I think that she is actually right about us church people. I think that we in the church, in many ways, have indeed lost our ability to see the beauty of what God is doing in the world all around us, apart from Sunday morning for 1 hour. There is this movement in our culture right now, people just like this dear, awesome family member. It's a movement of people who don't show up for church on Sunday mornings like us, but they have this active and creative faith. They are people who are wrestling with deep questions of God and recognizing God in the world in shocking and dynamic ways. We insiders like to use labels to describe this group. There's been words in the media used like the nuns, the millennialists, the spiritual but not religious people. But regardless of name, it has occurred to me that they may be on to something amazing that we are missing. I mean, we all experience the same world, but are we as quick in this church community to see God dynamically acting in everything around us? Now, let's be honest, for most of us, we do not see God in much of the world. In some ways, I think it's maybe just that we're not trained to see God in the world around us. I mean, generally, I've found in my 6 years here at House of Prayer that this church community doesn't use that sort of language to talk about God everywhere, right? I mean, this morning, we walked from this church down to Yanni's for breakfast. The weather was quintessential. We knew about it. We remarked about how nice the weather was. Yet we didn't connect the obvious dots to that beauty coming from our beautiful Creator and Maker God. We thought it, or maybe we didn't. And it's difficult for us to see God in this world for more reasons than simply we aren't trained to do it. The world is full of distractions, right? And increasingly so. If not full of distractions, full of forces that intentionally draw us away from seeing the world as God's work. Anyone watch the news? Nobody. A couple of you. Okay. I don't. To be honest, I do not watch the news because I always feel like it's not really news. It's on TV, so generally it's some producer or editor's idea of what will sell so that they can get commercial people to pay lots of money for the advertising, and it's whatever will make those people, the networks and the advertisers, money. The national news, I think, is even more guilty of this tactic. I don't know about you, but I do not see a lot of God's work on the national news. News of shootings, stabbings, car accidents, fires, people dying. I just don't see or experience God in that kind of news. And if we aren't being intentionally thwarted and diverted from God's kingdom by the news, we usually self-inflict this distraction to ourselves, right? Now, I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again because it's a good one and articulates the point. Last year, maybe 2 years ago, we were at a restaurant down in Robinson with Stacy's family, her parents, and her dad's like, "Mike, turn around and look behind you, slowly." So I look back, and it's a family of 4, father, mother, 2 kids, maybe 10 and 12, and they're all sitting there like this. Completely oblivious to each other, to the world around them. I mean, Bob said, "Mike, turn around slowly," but I probably could have jumped up and stood on the table and made some motions and they would have noticed me. To be honest, friends, I've got to caution you and me, us, about the way technology is alarmingly distracting us from what God is doing around us. Unfortunately, my experience in that restaurant a couple years ago is getting increasingly common, right? I mean, you have to see it around you. I'm guilty myself of this thing, just ask Stacy. Going to sporting events are crazy, like high school sporting events or just kids' sporting events. More than half the parents are there zoned in on their phone, not talking with the other parents, not even paying attention to the game going on where their kids are participating. You go to a Pirates game or even watch it on TV and the camera's panning around and everybody's like, we're talking on the phone. Our oblivion to the world and to the people around us is shocking, terrifying, and downright sad. There's no 24-hour cable services or cell phones in Jesus' day. But I think Jesus had a pretty strong sense that people were struggling with similar sorts of things. Jesus uses those beautiful words from Isaiah in the gospel that Greg just read, right? These words that say, "You will indeed listen, but never understand. And you will indeed look, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and their ears are hard of hearing. They have shut their eyes so that they might look not with their eyes, look with their eyes, and listen with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn. And I would heal them." And then Jesus summarizes with his own words, saying, "But blessed are your eyes, people, for they see, and blessed are your ears, for they hear. Truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." The kingdom of God happening right now is something to experience, to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, to feel. Do you see it with your eyes? Do you hear it with your ears? Do you smell it? Do you taste it? Do you feel it? I mean, it's easy to talk about those things like the grandeur of Niagara Falls or the Grand Canyon or the Rocky Mountains, right? We can see God in those things clear enough. But what about a fog-laden valley as the sun is slowly waking up over it? What about the way you squint your eyes as you walk outside here in moments? The beautiful sun warming your face. What about how amazingly blue the sky can be? The lush green of grass. The beauty of a brick wall and the work to build it. Have you ever stopped to look at the Ohio River, not just drive over it, but to look at it and think about the volume of water, the amount of life that has been supported in this valley over the thousands and thousands of years it has gone through this valley? Have you ever stopped to listen to the birds? Have you heard the power of the wind pulling the leaves from the trees? Have you heard the power of nature when a thunderstorm rolls along and you're riding your bike down the road? Have you marveled at how loud nature can be and then how deafeningly quiet it can be? No doubt you have sat next to the ocean and closed your eyes and heard the sound of the waves, but have you ever sat by a small stream and done the same? Do you smell God's creation around you? Like that smell when you open a box of fresh pizza, freshly ground coffee beans, grains mashing in the brewery. That earthy smell of decaying leaves and foliage mixed with the sweetness of ferns and mosses and fresh growth. The smell of a campfire. For me, the smell of a coal-burning furnace. The smell of that certain perfume or odor that casts you back into a different day and reminds you of that one you loved. You taste the richness of God. Decadent chocolate, spicy wings, a cool drink on a scorching day, and a hot drink on a frigid day. The soft, doughy texture of a handmade pierogi. The beautiful complexity of warm pie. The smoky and charred beauty of freshly grilled burgers or ribs. The simple greatness of a hot dog at a ball game. Have you experienced these things and said, that's God? Have you felt the wind cool you on a warm day and said, that is God? Have you given thanks for your mattress and pillow at night when you lay down on them? Have you felt the smoothness of a freshly sanded piece of wood and looked down at your hand and saw the microscopic grains of wood still in your hand? Have you scraped your knees on the pavement? Have you felt the softness or the callousness of another person's hand as you embraced it in yours, greeting them? Have you sat and therapeutically petted a dog or a cat just because you both needed it? Blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it. And they longed to hear what you hear, and they could not hear it. How have you been experiencing God and saying, yes, that's it? Where is God?